Welcome to the Intuitive Insight Podcast. This is Timmy E., your host, your counselor, and your Sherpa for our episodic journey through mental health, counseling, and other areas of wellness and balance. On this episode, we continue our discussion with our guest, Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling, as she continues to discuss with us about the controversial Netflix series, 13 Reasons Why, and the reach of mental health wellness in our everyday lives. And just because we didn't get a chance to do it last episode, it doesn't mean that Suzelle is off the hook from our Instant Insight segment. All this and much more on this episode of the Intuitive Insight Podcast. From our break, once again here with Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling, here on the Intuitive Insight Podcast, and we are digging deep on 13 Reasons Why. So the next question I have for you is, what are your thoughts on the victimization mentality and the gender representation on the show? Ooh, big solid question.
That is a big question.
Yes, and I will answer after you as well, so.
All right. Well, I definitely think it hit home to a lot of adolescents. I mean, the things that we saw in the show are things that we see in the office. I mean, there are things that I see in the office that it's very real. Yeah, some of it could have been, a little bit more dramatized or whatnot, but a lot of it is very real. And I really feel like it actually represented all different gender roles. I mean, there was, oh gosh, I forgot his name. The one that did the newsletter.
Yes, I don't, oh gosh, is his name Adam something? I don't know. I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like there was so many, there was Alex, who was like that outcast kid, but then he like fit in with, the jocks a little bit. So, I feel like they really did try to represent every kind of role that a kid might have in high school. Of course, that hit home for more high schoolers, I imagine, but also middle school. So, again, I think it kind of painted an accurate picture. I don't think it all happens all in a row, kind of like how it happened to Hannah. But these are things that happen. There are lists. There are social media things where kids are posting, hey, look at that girl, and doing like, what is it? Social media bullying on their Instagram pictures. It happens all the time.
Yeah, it's a new way of bullying compared to the way that we were. Once again, I make myself sound so old by saying that. But the way the way bullying used to happen, where it wasn't instantaneous. It's almost as if there is a reprieve when you go home. And then now there's no reprieve because everyone uses social media and there's always 24 the gotta get it now, gotta have it now perspective of our age. And don't get me wrong, I'm part of it too. Like there are times that I have to have it right away. I have to have something right away, so that's perfectly understandable. But I think for me, the victimization mentality was, once again, it hit that area where it seemed like it sounds like I'm lambasting the counselor, Mr. Porter. But I'm really not. It just speaks once again of the fact that some of the questions he asked were very, very standard questions. Yet at the same time, there was the sense of victimization, like a blaming the victim mentality.
Yes.
Do you know who it is? If you don't want to press things, then I can't do anything. And it's almost like putting all the onus on the quote on the rape survivor, on that. And once again, that's a big thing for me. Working with individuals who have had trauma. I'm sure that's something you have had that. Is that I always try to suggest, hey, I want you to, as really hard, as difficult as it is, I want you to remember that you're not a victim. You're a survivor of this situation. You survived this. You survived the sexual assault. You survived this rape. You survived this car crash. You're not a victim. You're a survivor. And if you weren't a survivor, you wouldn't be here right now. And it's that kind of a situation. And so when I looked at that, it made me think, wow, it made me think of the stark contrast between males and females in regards of this victimization mentality, of the blaming the victim mentality. With the gender representation, I thought it was, well, let's put it like this. I definitely, my most interesting thought was with Tony. And they said, and when he goes, I'm gay, right? And like, wow, macho dude works on cars. I thought, yes!
Yeah.
It's like,
that
yes!
was awesome. Clay had no idea, so it's like, don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. And the same thing with, what's her name? Courtney, the adopted Asian female by the two homosexual dads, by the two gay dads. And her message was, I already have two gay fathers. What can, and if I'm gay, if I'm a lesbian, what does that say? And it creates like these expectations, and she doesn't want to live up to expectations. So there's so many different, gender roles that are being explored now in this series in comparison to if the series was released 20 years ago, 25 years ago, which is great, being a maybe I'll get some flack for this, but eventually we're progressing to understand. And it's not so much about liberalism versus conservatism. It's more about knowledge, gaining knowledge and gaining how things work and understanding people, places, and things and mindsets and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a great way of showing that there are different, quote, gender roles out there. In high school, in the real world, gender roles are no longer binary. They're very much on a spectrum. So, lastly, how would we educate young men and women and children about some of the deeper aspects of the series? For example, consent to sexual activity, seeking signs of depression and crisis, or asking for help. How do we educate people with, knowing what we've seen on this series? What are the things that can help us educate people to be able to watch out for that?
Well, I definitely think, you look at kids who are in school the majority of their day. So why are we not taking some time to have this education in school and then have parents, right, attend these things so that parents can continue that education at home? Because a big part of what we saw in the show was that Hannah's parents had no clue about what was going on. She put up that front. They had no idea. And they had no awareness of how they're arguing and how their stressors could be imposing some kind of stress onto her. And I think it's really important for parents to be educated on what they can do also to support their children, as well as, staff at schools, if they can do. I know here in New Jersey, I don't know what they're doing out in Arizona, but I know here in New Jersey, they're actually showing the series in schools, and they're doing it as a series so that they can educate the kids and talk to them about it, because this is something that, everyone's talking about it at this point. Another thing is, having some sort of orientation, having kids understand they can go to their counselor, things are confidential, and then having the resources for them. Because Mr. Porter, not for nothing, but he didn't, when he told Hannah he couldn't do anything if she wouldn't tell him who it was, that's not true. There was a lot he could have done.
That's definitely not true. It would have, once again, it's a situation where every counselor would handle it differently. And it's more like, if it was me in that situation, I would say, listen, if you're not comfortable sharing who it is, that's okay. I just want to know you're okay. What can we do to help you? If at some point in the future you feel you're more comfortable bringing this up, whoever the perpetrator was, that's fine. But right now, let's focus on you. What is it that you need to get off your chest for now? What is it that I can do to help you at this point? Is there someone you want me to talk to about? Is there someone else other than the people in this room that you want me to share this with? And that is, because that's, once again, that's a situation where, professional and ethical conduct, it's like, okay, an underage person just came to you and says they got raped. What, and there's an accusation, right away there is either a formal accusation or an implied one. Right. What is it as a counselor that you're supposed to do? And right away, I saw Mr. Porter right away kind of think, I'm thinking through the lens of legal situations.
Yes.
Legal situations and that kind of that kind of perspective, that kind of lens. Yes. Whereas the one thing that I know I always incorporate into when working with individuals is I treat the person, not the illness or not the diagnosis or not the thing that not the specific thing that they're dealing with. So and it right away made me think, hey, this person is looking at it from the lens of how, am I going to get in trouble? Not so much that they're going to get in trouble, but how, what's the quote best way to do this through a legal, ethical, scholarly academic institution. Well, of course, I have a sense that if he was a private practice therapist, totally handle it differently.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the legal implications of schools.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the way we can educate people, number one, through this podcast. I love the fact that we have to be able to show parents and kids. I think in the series they showed it after it happened, and it's like that's little too late. Same thing with sex education. Once again, I'm gonna get lambasted for this. So if you're gonna use this as an audio, as a soundbite, please listen to the whole podcast before using it as a soundbite. But with sex education, it's something that should be discussed fairly regularly, having an open dialogue, rather than having it. It's kind of like, well, if something bad happened already, it's kind of pointless. It gives a service to other people to be mindful of it, but the people who've already been affected, you can't do anything about that anymore. Right. So having regular things are very helpful. I think it's very important to do that in general, whether it's the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year, things of that nature. One of the things, I'm looking right now at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I'm going to list right now some of the warning signs, the suicide warning signs, with you here. And you tell me if you agree with this. First things first, some suicide warning, something to look out for when concerned that a person might be suicidal is a change your behavior or presence of entirely new behaviors. To be very honest with you, I'm looking at Alex, and he might be someone to be mindful of too. The sharpest concern if the new or changed behavior is related to painful event, loss, or change. Very understandable. So talk. If a person talks about being a burden to people, feeling trapped, experiencing unbearable pain, having no reason to live, or killing themselves, of course, these are signs of the content to look for. Now, the behaviors to look for is increased use of alcohol or drugs, recreational drugs, looking for, it's weird, it's not even recreational, it's looking for a way to numb the pain that they're experiencing.
And self-medicate.
Looking for a way to, looking at their search history, looking at ways to hurt themselves. That's another behavior to look at. Acting recklessly. Alex did that with the car situation, right?
And the fighting,
Yep, the fighting. Withdrawing from activities, isolating from family and friends, sleeping too much or too little, visiting or calling people to say goodbye, giving away prized possessions and aggression. Once again, Alex, which I think that's going to be based on season 2. So I have a sense that's going to be based on that. Moods. People who are considering suicide often display one or more of the following: depression, loss of interest, rage, irritability, humiliation, anxiety. And of course, these are and so you look at all that. There's the content and the context. And then there's some extra suicide risk factors too: mental health history, environmental factors like stressful life events, moving, things of that, transitions, and even historical factors if they've tried to hurt themselves in the past. So it's hard because you're hearing all of this and right away you think, oh, that's my kid. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's my friend. And, and I always kind of say, and I've had concerned people say to me, well, what do I do? And I often, I'm not sure how to talk to them about it. And I often say to individuals, be a friend or be a parent or be whoever you are in that person's life and just talk to them about it and just say, hey, are you all right? I just want to make sure you're doing all right. Because I'm noticing as much as the person will shun you off, will shun you off. It is a way for them to know that, hey, in a weird roundabout way, for some reason, I can sense something's going on. You got to tell me. You got to tell me if something's going on for you. So,
and that's all Hannah wanted also. I mean, at the end, that's all she wanted was for someone to ask her, right? That was her last thing with Mr. Porter.
Yeah.
So sometimes just asking someone if they're okay.
Absolutely. And so, lastly, last question. 13 Reasons Why. As a series itself, for mental health implications. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Can I give A in the middle?
Sure.
It's tough because, again, it depends on the perspective. I mean, some people could debate that it was, like, wrong that she left tapes and, like, basically tortured these people, right, who had hurt her rather than confronting them. Although she did in her own way, right? So, I mean, this could go both ways. But I will give it a thumbs up because it has brought this issue to light and now people can talk about it.
Yes.
And hopefully parents will now take the opportunity maybe and sit down with their kids and say, listen, do you feel this way? Is this happening to you?
Yeah, and then the kid's reaction is like, oh God, no, God, leave me alone. And
right.
It's like, okay, I just for some reason,
making sure.
For some reason, if it is, please, beg you, just let us know because we want to be there for you. And it's weird because there's that weird dichotomy relationship between parents and kids, especially if they're teenagers. At the end of the day, I think kids want their parents to be parents. As much as I remember, some of my things growing up, as much as we hate them, we say we hate you, I don't want to deal with you, all that stuff, and a parent will say, it's part of being a parent, you just got to be there, you got to, and I know one thing for me that was really important, regardless of what I said, was they were there. Through thick and thin, through crappy, through great stuff, they were there. I can gladly say that one of them or both of them were always around. And that was something that was helpful, even though we didn't necessarily talk about feelings and emotions and things like that.
I definitely can agree with you on that as well. I mean, it's tough because I can look back and also say, like, my parents were always there. I didn't want them around, and I'd be like, oh, you're so embarrassing. But I knew that if I needed something, I could go. I could go to them. As terrifying as it might have felt for me at that time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
They were always there. And kids want that. They just want their parents to be there as an option.
Yeah. If it was up to me in answering my own question, I would give it a thumbs up. Main reason why is because, I agree with you about the fact that, it brings it out to light. For me, Hannah, you said, she was confronting everybody in her own way. And for me, it's like she did try to confront people. She tried to confront people directly about what happened to her, but she wasn't getting heard, or she was getting shunned off, or she was, once again, the whole victim blaming mentality of, oh, you're just I hate to say, oh, you're such a slut, so don't, whatever, you deserved it, you needed it, you wanted it. That last monologue by Bryce to Clay certainly played into that. It's like, no, actually, she confronted you about this. She said no, she said this, and still, it was all her concerns were set aside. Same thing with Alex, too, which I believe the next season will be based on. All of his concerns, every single time, he wanted to, with his dad saying, I don't think you have to testify on this. He wanted to testify. He wanted to say everything. And everyone is just saying, don't even think about it. It was Clay who ultimately was the one who was saying, I'm going to blow this up. I'm threatening to blow this up because we need to blow this up.
Yep.
And if you really think about it, it's interesting. Clay was a bystander. Clay was suffering from the bystander effect during the time when she was in peril. But after the fact, it was the rest of the kids who were the bystanders, and he was the active one. And I think that says something to me about Clay, because he was the one who was willing to learn from, once again, lament your past, learn from your past, use that in the present. And, once he finally got through all the tapes, I think he used it. So
yeah, for sure.
Just for the fact that I can see hope in the fact that, there are people who are like Clay. There are a lot of people out there who don't know what to do or don't know the signs, like some of the signs we discussed before. I give it a thumbs up because if you end up in a similar way like Clay, where you learn and you utilize what you have learned in the present to prevent something worse, then definitely the show, the series has done its job. For me, clinically at least.
Right.
All right, so this has been digging deep into 13 Reasons Why with your host of the Intuitive Insight Podcast, Timmy E., and my guest, Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling. And we will be right back. Stay tuned. We are going to go into the next part of this podcast, which is called Instant Insights with Suzelle Marques. Stick around. Promote and advertise through the wonderful world of podcasting. If you would like to partner with Intuitive Insight Podcast and promote your practice, service, product, or business, send an email to media@intuitiveinsightcounseling.com. All right, so we are back from our break here once again with Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling in Union County, New Jersey. And now is a time that I like to call Instant Insights. And basically, Instant Insight, it's a word, it's when we have a new guest on the podcast, we are excited to always bring it back. And I hope that, Suzelle, you're ready to, I hope that you're game, and I hope that you're ready for it.
Let's do it. I hope I know I'm ready to go. I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, once again, it's like a word association, right? First thing that comes to your mind. And feel free to. Well, what we'll do is, I'll ask you a question. You ask me a similar phrase or something, and I'll do the same thing. So that way, it's equal. It's collaborative rather than just one person answering.
All right.
But okay. So I want you to how Instant Insight works. I will share with you some words or phrases, and I want you to immediately provide your most immediate reaction and response. And then if there's a rather intriguing one, we can discuss it a little bit together.
Okay.
Okay, let me first start. Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Cohort. Yeah!
Cohort!
What was it? 24 or 14? 14?
I think it was 14. It's of us.
14.
Of us, yeah, in the cohort. Okay. Do you have one for me, or not yet? Think of some if you as you need.
Oh my gosh. Talk space.
Oh, convenient, and worthwhile.
Okay.
Yes. From me, mental health awareness.
May.
May.
This is the month.
Yes, and this is why we're doing this. Sorry?
Yeah, for sure. So just being aware, sharing all the knowledge that you can with people, spreading the word. The more aware people are, the more preventative things we can do, and the more positivity we can spread.
Awesome. May is Mental Health Awareness Month for everybody out there who's listening in podcast land. Yeah. All right, I'm going to ask you another one.
All right.
So that way you have a chance to list down some stuff for you that you want to ask me for later. Okay. How about football or soccer?
Coping skills. Positive coping skills for people.
Positive coping skills for people. Football and soccer, huh?
Yep. Get the energy out. All right.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. How about music?
Singing. I just go straight to singing. Again, I think it's just about being in that moment, enjoying that tune, singing that tune, being mindful. It's very important.
Being mindful. I like your buzzword.
Mindful. Yeah.
Mindful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get one for you. How about insight?
Insight for me is within. Has to be from within. Everything that you have learned about yourself, about people, your perspective, you derive insight from that. And the more things you learn, the more insight you can have.
Okay.
That's insight for me.
I like that.
So once again, if you're using this as an audio bite or a sound bite, please listen to the whole podcast. Actually, I don't think you need to. That was pretty self-explanatory. All right. 13 Reasons Why.
Selena Gomez. But I gotta tell you, she did a good job. I know that she's been a victim of a lot of, social media bullying and things of that sort. So I think, she went into this with good intention.
Yeah, and I was actually watching the they had what's called the documentary, The Making of, and she was a huge part of it. I'm like, oh, if you didn't watch the documentary, it's on Netflix. Like right after the season finale played, it went on right away. And so, if you have a chance to watch it, I would encourage everyone who watched the show, watch that. Watch The Making of. Because everything that we're talking about in this podcast today, in the past couple of days, past couple of weeks, has been about spreading mental health awareness. And that is exactly what in their show, in their documentary, that's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to be as like true to the book as possible and convey the same emotions that when people are reading the book, they see it on the screen. So I think she did a great job of bringing it out there. And it actually surprised me, like, oh, wow, she's dealing with all of this, too. And she's a public figure.
Yeah.
So
I gotta check that out. I didn't watch it. I gotta check it out.
Yeah, definitely. If you have a chance, check it out. Couple other ones for me. Mindfulness.
Mindfulness, about being in the present moment. Stop thinking about the past. Stop thinking about the future. Live day to day and see what you can do today so that tomorrow you can focus on tomorrow.
What a tagline. That is your tagline right there. That's your motto. That's your motto right there.
All right, cool. Okay, fine. I gotta get a motto. I didn't think of one yet.
Well, that's your tag. That's your motto right there. And luckily, this is good. Luckily, this will hopefully we'll have a chance to. You'll have a chance to see this sooner. When it's for everybody on podcast land. I want everybody to know that is going to be her future motto, at least part of it. So that she came up with it right here on the Intuitive Insight podcast with Timmy E.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Favorite place.
Ooh, I automatically thought food. I don't know why. So I would say a restaurant might be my favorite place, so I can eat food.
Okay, got it.
Eating is very mindful, I'll have you know. If you really just sit there and enjoy it, that is a very mindful activity if you do it right. So.
Absolutely. You have to smell the food, you have to see the food, you have to touch the food with your knife and your fork.
Yes.
See the texture of it. When you taste it, it's not like scarfing it down and wolfing it down. It's actually taking the taste. And for the longest time, I've always wondered, these really, really fancy schmancy restaurants, they have such real tiny portions. And for the longest time, I never understood why. And I realized it's because it's not about portion and making full. It's about experiencing the taste of stuff. Now, I'm a fairly blue collar guy, so I want portions. So, but I can very much, understand the perspective. Like, all right, you want to do mindful eating, mindful things. Perfectly understandable.
I have one for you.
Sure.
Judgment.
I've certainly it's too commonplace. It's rampant. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Rampant. Judgment is rampant, and we should do the best we can to not be biased or to not give judgment, rather than to rather than to see what's in front of us and make determinations not out of subjectivity but objectivity.
Love it. That's good. All right.
That's when I think of that. My last thing, or one of the last things I have, is insight. What's yours? What's your perspective when you think of insight?
Insight. I think a lot of things. It's about being aware of yourself, right? Being aware of what works for you, what doesn't work for you, which then brings that insight in what you can do, what actions you can take for yourself or for other people or the situation that you're in.
Very nice. I mean, insight is something that people won't tell you. You have to figure out for yourself. Yeah. Although I won't lie, there are times when we derive insight, when we can get insight from other people who are willing to help us get it, but we have to be willing to find it ourselves too. So It's a really, really important piece. So last thing, duet.
Like that one we were supposed to do when we were in college.
Exactly. I'm so glad you remembered.
That's the first thing that came up to mind. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Because I know I've seen I've seen some of your things. Like, all right, now I have this whole whatever it is duet mule thing. Like, all right, let's see if we can do it moving forward. Okay, we have to set up a time for that. And for all of you in podcast land, when we have a chance to set it in motion and we put it out there, you will be the first to see it. You will be the first to see it. All right. So thank you so much, Suzelle, for being part of the Instant Insight here on the Intuitive Insight podcast. Stick around. We have one more thing, and that's our most important segment of the episode, and that is the Insight of the Night. Stick around.
At the end of each episode, we try to sum everything that we've talked about into small bits of insight that tries to inspire others and ourselves to build upon our own awareness and insight, as well as to help us in our journey of living a balanced life. It's time for the Insight of the Night.
So we are back here for the Insight of the Night with Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling in Union County, New Jersey. And I wanted to first start off with the Insight of the Night by going into a word that I said in the intro for the Insight of the Night, and that is awareness. With May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I think that word is the most important thing that came out of this podcast for us, for me at least, specifically. Whether it's having a new partner, a new ally in the field, and being able to bring out and educate everyone, bring out new information to everyone about counseling, about psychology, about mental health awareness in Suzelle Marques, LPC of Mindful Counseling, to the awareness that 13 Reasons Why brought out about the importance of minding our mental health awareness, our awareness of other people and how they're doing, and also, most importantly, the awareness for ourselves about how we're feeling, about what's going on with us. Ultimately, 13 Reasons Why was an opportunity for me, for us in this podcast to talk about how we felt about the series from a clinical, professional, and sometimes even a personal perspective. And once again, the word that comes to mind is awareness. If for some reason this show did not raise awareness for Mental Health Awareness Month, then I don't know what will. But even if it doesn't, I know I here at the Intuitive Insight podcast and Intuitive Insight Media, as well as Suzelle Marques of Mindful Counseling, will continue to provide awareness to everyone out there who's willing to hear, who's willing to learn, who's willing to be aware of themselves and for everyone else. That is my insight of the night.
That's amazing. I couldn't have said it better. But I would definitely agree. I mean, I think the most important thing to take out of this is that we have to really be aware of how we affect other people. I think that sometimes we get so consumed with our own feelings, our own stress. We have work, we have school, we have our family problems, and sometimes we forget to look at the person sitting right next to us who might be struggling with something. So I think...
Be mindful.
Yeah, being mindful, right? Being mindful. That's it. I mean, we got to do it. And it's hard because we live in a society where mindfulness is not a thing. We're not taught that. So... it's really about paying attention to what's around you. And of course to yourself. I mean, if you're not functioning, how can you help someone else, right? So of course you got to be in a good place yourself. But it's really important about just noticing. You can make such a big difference just by complimenting someone on their shoes or asking someone how they're doing. And I think that's what I get from also this show, because Clay, for example, he was there. He was there the whole time and he cared about Hannah, but she had no clue and he never really thought to ask her. So I think that brings up a lot for me when I think about that show as well. Mm-hmm. And so I was just knowing there's always someone there who wants to hear. There's always someone who cares and who has the resources. Whether it's someone you talk to a lot or it's someone who you don't speak to that much, there's someone out there who does want to hear what's going on with you. So
absolutely, and that was a strong, well-laid insight of the night. And once again, Suzelle Marques of Mindful Counseling in Union County, New Jersey, thank you so much for being a part of the Intuitive Insight podcast. I hope that if we reach out or we have a chance to collaborate further in the future, whether it be that duet, I'm not forgetting this time, and or other educational videos and digging deep into certain topics of mental health and counseling, you're more than welcome to collaborate with me, and we'll collaborate with each other to bring out that mental health awareness, not just for our clients, but to everybody who we can through any platform that we can. So I wanted to thank you so much for being part of the show, for being a guest on the show, and I hope that you do well with your practice. And as always, if you need anything, Intuitive Insight is your ally in this endeavor.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it very much. And likewise, if you ever need anything, you know where I'm at. You know how to find me. So thank you so much.
No problem. And once again, we are here. And once again, we are here for at the Intuitive Insight podcast. You know our motto: strong on our own, but more powerful together. Have a great night, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast. See ya.
Bye, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Intuitive Insight podcast. I hope that there was something that helped bring a little bit of insight into your life. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to take the journey with us to build your insight, subscribe to the Intuitive Insight podcast. Check out intuitiveinsightmedia.com for updates for our next episode. As always, this is Timmy E of the Intuitive Insight podcast, and don't forget, strong on our own, more powerful together. Have a great night.